See you on the other side. Yep. Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's 9 December, and we have the second webinar in the series of 3 of EPA-POLIS and Park for Sump. We'll start in a minute, just get settled in. Everybody's arriving. Speakers are ready, so we'll be good to go in about a minute. Is Nigel Williams already here? That's maybe a practical question we have to solve. I think.
No, he isn't.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he's on his way. Okay, I think we'll start, not to lose too much time. We have a very busy agenda, so we need all the seconds we can get. Welcome, I'm Ivo Kree from POLIS. Happy to welcome you at the second webinar in a series of 3 webinars where 3 stakeholders discuss the status of parking in 2021-2022. POLIS as a network of cities and regions, EPA, the European Parking Association, and the EU-funded research project Park for Sump, and a group of 16 cities, universities, research institutes who is working on a new parking agenda. And we'll hear of all these stakeholders in the next 2 hours. Before we start, if you have questions for the speakers, if you want to bring elements to the discussion in the panels, do post them in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be looking at that. We'll be feeding that to the speakers. The number of registrations was quite high, so we think it's the best way to handle this in writing. But we have Theo, Thuis, the other moderator, and myself. We engage. We commit to reflecting what is written into the exchange with the speakers. We are recording this webinar, so we can also share the recording and presentations afterwards, and we also will write a short summary report of the webinar. This is the agenda. I'm not going to read it, but we have a good mix of speakers from public and private sector. And I would like to give the floor to Nigel Williams of EPA to say a couple of words of welcome.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, it was, first of all, there's an apology from Lawrence because I'm standing for, I'm Vice President of the European Parking Association. Lawrence Bannerman was supposed to be here, but and he will be here in about half an hour, but he was called away to an important meeting with the Italian government. So I will do my best to stand in for Lawrence. For those of you who don't know, European Parking Association was founded in 1983, and we represent today 22 national European associations and their members. And those members, they cover both public and private sector, and manage somewhere over 15 million on-street and over 25 million off-street parking spaces. And between them, they have decades of experience organizing, let's call it the static part of mobility, and delivering also sophisticated technological management solutions. So the collaboration between EPA and POLIS dates back over 10 years. Ivo remembers the first combined workshop was a face-to-face one in those days, was in Stuttgart. So today's the second webinar in the series of 3 showcases how EPA members are contributing to the mobility sector with through the supply of off-street parking. The focus is the adaptation of off-street parking activities to new mobility services. It's increasingly clear that parking management policies must focus on sustainability and integration with other mobility service stakeholders. And as you'll see, traditional parking garage activities are changing, opening up and integrating with multimodal services, things like shared mobility, EV charging, last mile delivery services, etc. And we're seeing that the business and management models of the parking sector are changing rapidly from simple car parks to urban mobility hubs. So today's presentations are from some key players from amongst our EPA members. Several of the organizations present actually have won awards in the biennial EPA Award for Excellence in Parking. So for my part, on behalf of EPA, thank you for tuning into this webinar. I hope you'll find it interesting. And I'll hand over, I think, to Olivier. Is that right, Ivo?
Yes, indeed, Nigel, and thank you. Thank you also for the good cooperation. Hope you also stay around to
I will.
to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Also, if you would have them. So and maybe we can tap into your wisdom as well if needed. So yes, Olivier Challe is chairing the POLIS parking working group, and he also has some words of welcome.
Hello everyone. Yes, welcome. Thanks to register to this second webinar of the POLIS and EPA associations. POLIS is an association of local transport authorities for which I'm chairing the parking working group. We just had an annual conference in Gothenburg where we had an interesting workshop on parking. We had the meeting of the working parking group. Our hot topics are about accessibility and about EV charging, and we are meeting tomorrow the DG Move to exchange with them on those issues. So, but today we're going to speak about off-street parking management activities for new mobility services. So hope you will enjoy it. Thank you very much, and thanks again to POLIS and EPA to have organized this webinar.
Thank you, Olivier. First on the bill today is Park for Sump, also co-organizing the webinar. Park for Sump is unique. It's the only project funded by the European Union which looks into detail in urban parking. And with us today is the project coordinator, Vander Kuylen of Mobiel 21, and also Peter Schick from the city of Freiburg. And Lawrence will give a brief introduction about on Park for Sump and how parking and the public sector engagements for parking set the framework for new mobility measures. And Peter brings the example of his city of Freiburg, who has a decades-long experience in working on parking in view of modal shift. But I'll give the floor to Lawrence first, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Good morning, everyone, also from my side. As Ivo has already introduced, I'm indeed Vander Kuylen, and I will be presenting to you today. You should see my screen as well, no? Or yes. Okay.
Yes, we see it. Yeah.
Perfect. I will be presenting the Park for Sump project, as Ivo has already mentioned. Yeah, well, it is indeed a first, since we are the only European project on Horizon 2020 level, which is dealing indeed with these topics. But therefore, I'm also really happy to be here and to be able to present to you. I think I will be presenting only 3 general ideas. First, I will be touching upon the parking management and the reasons why. then diving a bit deeper into the Park for Some project, and then by finishing off by providing some light touched examples of some cities, and then giving the floor to Peter for a more in-depth example. But the audience here is a bit odd for us. While normally when we present, these are the opening slides, as you can see also here. And mostly when we present Park for Some, it's towards mobility professionals and policymakers of all sorts. And we still need to convince them in some way of the urban parking policy and the need to start working on this topic. Next to all other topics they're mostly working on in their cities, we need to convince them of parking. And then these kind of statements make sense, because if you then say like, okay, imagine all cities, imagine all cars driving in your city, they were parked somewhere before and they will be parked somewhere in 10, 15, 20 minutes. So if you look at the scale of this topic that you need to solve or to start working on, this is the scale. It's large, it's immense. Then on the other hand, we are here in a webinar hosted by the European Parking Association, and I don't think I need to convince you anymore of parking and the valuable role this plays in the urban environment. You're already on the dark side. I'm quite convinced of that. But on the other hand, I think I can still make a case for parking strategies on the urban level, and opening the door for a broad cooperation across the board, as Ivo has already said. And in this regard, I'm also really happy to be here and to have been invited by the EPA. Some other slides I mostly use as an introduction, and yeah, parking is of course about public space. We have some really recent examples of top-tier cities, London and Paris, which have been doing some things with public space in recent months, years, especially also in the light of the pandemic. A lot of public space has been re-evaluated, and a lot of interesting things are happening there. And why are there so many things happening in public space? Well, public space is a valuable and limited good, and public space is also subject to a lot of policy challenges, not only mentioning climate change, but also commercial attractiveness, social functions, changing mobility patterns, blending in active modes, providing space for demineralization, for greenery. So you can see already a lot of the challenges cities are faced with actually need to be solved in the public space, and that's why it's such a busy policy field. And also we can admit that there's some pressure on the public space, because if you have to accommodate all those challenges, there needs to be or maybe there needs to be a reshuffling of the previously existing monopoly of storing cars in public space, as it was and as it maybe is still in a lot of cities. So just this as to setting the context, setting the reasons, setting the role of parking management in city and in policy making on city level. Then touching upon the project Park for Some, we are actually doing a lot of things, but we can summarize it in 3 things. First of all, the ambition is to move from the operational task and managing parking, just operational in some way, making sure everything is working fine, moving from that part to really a strategic one. So parking management should be also fulfilling the goals that you have as a city, that you have pledged for in your SUMP. This parking management should be a way of lifting up your city and moving forward in all the ambitions you have set yourself. And indeed, the second point is really explaining. So we are convinced that parking management is the backbone can be the backbone of the SUMP. It would be not so wise to work, for instance, on bicycle infrastructure and really spearhead on bicycle infrastructure without having a parking management scheme, because maybe you can work for that for some years, but after some years you will find the limits of what you can do if you don't have a parking management scheme as well. And thirdly, we have been developing a tool, an assessment tool, which will and can help cities in evaluating the state of their parking policy, and which can draw up an operational plan to move forward. Who are we? I've already mentioned it. We are 16 European cities who have been working together for 2.5 years already on this really interesting topic, but it's, as Ivo has already said, it's the first. So we are doing a lot of innovative things, and we are experimenting, finding out, moving forward. So it's a first, and a first comes also with some challenges. But this is great. This is a great environment just to do things, to try things. What we have been doing on European level, this is maybe something that I still want to present to you. We have been drawing up a position paper last year, and this is actually dealing or making a case for some funding conditionality, which means if you want to make a sump, you mostly, or you get partially funded by the European Union to make those plans. And we actually, as Park for Sump, we are making a case that if cities are applying for these funding schemes, they should have a parking management in place, or at least they should work on their parking management as a backbone. So this is something we are striving for, because we see it as a way forward for all the reasons I've already mentioned. What does this then mean on a city level? I've already mentioned that cities, and especially in cities we are intensively working within the project, but a lot of other cities are working, and year by year, to a deeper extent, working on their parking strategies to make them in line with their SUMP goals. But this is definitely a process. Once the strategy is developed, or even while they're developing the strategy, this is definitely a process which is always in close cooperation with all different actors, with stakeholders of all sorts, with some citizens group, but also with the industry and with the expertise which is already in the industry for 50 plus years, something like that. So it would be not so wise not to include them. And this is also a process that we can feel in the cities that we have in our project, that is always a cooperative process. And this also results in some public-private partnerships, in them putting those strategy in the field. And I've also mentioned it here, it also presents some business opportunities, because a lot of things are changing, but change does not always mean for the worse. In this sense, it can also mean there are opportunities to fill in some gaps. And now I will dive into 3 policy examples. The first example is the revenue earmarking. This is one of the things we are spearheading in our project, which is actually been tested and put in place in the city of Ghent in Belgium. But now actually the Polish cities in our project, so Cracco and Gdansk, they're actually at the forefront of putting these schemes in their budget lines. What does this mean? So, okay, you have the common understanding, or it's kind of a bold way of putting it as well, but parking taxes or parking income is only a way of the depths of a city, which is broadly understood, but by mostly citizens. This is how it works. Well, to come up with a way of tackling these misconceptions is earmarking your revenues. So you say like, okay, we have a certain percentage of parking funds that we collect by our parking management scheme, but we will invest X percentage only in alternative modes, only in working on solutions, on alternatives. This is one thing we are working in quite successfully, especially in the Polish cities. If you want to know more about it, make sure to check our website. We have a lot of documentation about this. Another thing that we are working on, or in this case, the city of Rotterdam is working on, is actually the embedment of their parking management scheme, but also the on-street and the off-street offering. This is a screenshot that I took yesterday from their site. So this is how they publish their parking management in their city. So you see actually the black zone. This is the center zone where you pay a tariff of €4.20 an hour. And then you have the other tariffs around it. This is something that they have been extending and expanding in recent years. But what they also publish on this website is all the other parking facilities which are there, and not only their own parking facilities, but also privately owned parking facilities. And even to make the story complete, if you then check for 20 an hour, this is the tariff that the city has determined. You pay for an hour. If you then look for a parking garage in the zone, the tariff is 360, if I'm not mistaken, for an hour. So even there is a business case in this, and this is also the intention of the city. They want to push the citizens towards the parking garages because it makes more sense than the surge traffic they are encountering in their city. So this is their strategy, and then in how to fill in this strategy, there is definitely a role for the private operators. Voila. And then the third example, I will now gladly hand over to our project colleague Peter from the city of Freiburg, which he will be diving into the parking standard topic more in depth. This is all I had presented for you today, but let's definitely continue the conversation. You can reach out to me, and we would be happy to answer all your questions later or also here in the chat. So,
okay, thank you, Lawrence. While we switch to the slides of Peter, indeed, thank you. And we'll come back at the end of the webinar with a couple of next steps in Park for SEMP as well. We have a slide for that. Peter, can you share your slides? Yes. Also, I'd like to invite you to stick to the 12 minutes of presentation.
Is it already working, Ivo?
Not for me, but
not for you. Oh, one moment.
Yeah.
I will.
Yes, no. It's starting. And if you put it in the mode, now we see it in the presenter's view. So not.
Okay.
So that should be now it's
working.
Perfect. Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay, nice. Hello to all. My name is Peter Schick. I'm from the city of Freiburg, from the city administration, and I like to show you some short views about our new concepts in new development areas. So I'm dealing about off-street parking, private parking, which we are now focusing on new development areas. And I'd like to show you in a few words, in an overview, only one slide about the city of Freiburg that you know what we are about. Then a second 2 or 3 slides about the challenges that we have with growth. These are the main challenges as the city is increasing, is a student city, university city, and there we have to cope with some traffic problems, and we are trying to solve it as environmental friendly as possible. So about the city of Freiburg, it is in the southwest of Germany. It has about 230,000 residential people and a lot of university, and therefore it is attractive and has a lot of jobs and has a growing rate of about 1%. And what is special, it has really a tradition about environmental friendly traffic policy that goes back until 1970. So we have a straight line in looking always at the best way to make development as environmental friendly as possible. So we do concerning traffic policy, I would say we do all measurements that are possible or that are usual to make in middle-sized cities. We have a quite good tram network, which we are expanding year by year, which is not so usual for a city of this size. We have a railroad network for the region. We have pedestrian zones and car-free inner city, pedestrian and cycle networks, traffic calming, car and bike sharing, and nowadays electric vehicles, electric buses. So we are doing a lot of things about keeping traffic as environmental friendly as possible, but unfortunately, things are not as perfect as we wish they should be. You see now a graphic about the years of development of the number of cars in Freiburg in the last decades, and you see on this 30-year time span for example, or even going farther back, every year an increasing number of cars, which is mostly because the city is growing, but unfortunately always also because the numbers of cars per person is still increasing, even despite of our a lot of environmental friendly modes of traffic efforts. And now we are thinking about the future. What are the scenarios for the future? Will the trend will continue, or will it come to a constant scenario, or even maybe a decreasing scenario if we will succeed with the environmental friendly traffic policy? We don't know yet exactly, but we are working on it concerning growth, concerning new development areas. And that's what I want to show in only a few slides, in only a few minutes. Here, with some examples, you see one is the existing area, the city district of Vauban, which maybe some of you know because it was developed at about 2000, and there are some special things that made it a little bit somehow famous in the under people who are working on traffic policy and on town planning. And nowadays we are thinking about two next development areas which we are dealing on. A smaller one in the inner city called Klein Escholz, and a bigger one, Diedenbach, at the edge of the city. And on both areas, we are working on making the most environmental friendly traffic policy that we think is suitable under contemporary conditions. And first of all, before coming to the concepts, I would like to show you the conflicting goals we have, or the situation we have. If it was easy, we would not talk about what we are doing. It would be, we would just make it, but we have a lot of discussions about, and maybe you have in your cities also. We have targets, but we have the general trends, and they are not exactly fitting to each other. The targets are quite clear. We have clear targets on climate protection on federal level, on European level, on state level, and on city level. And we have additionally special targets because the housing costs went up higher and higher. There are clear targets to decrease the costs of building new housing areas. And the people also, the inhabitants, they want a high quality of urban space. So they want as less car as possible. But then on the other side, we have, as you've seen here on the sheet, fortunately, an increase in occupation. We have nearly no unemployment rate we are lucky in Freiburg, and we have an increase in wealth because of even more jobs. And then we have the problems with land development, with urban sprawl, and that is not so easy to get together. And now I want to talk only shortly about a general way to plan housing and how to keep with parking spaces. And only some years ago, it was very easy. It was by federal or by state law perfectly exact, a law that you have to build one parking space for each apartment. And bicycle parking was not so clear in the whole of Germany. That were different regulations. But for car parking, it was completely clear. And also in the state law of the state of Baden-Württemberg. But now, 2015, it got a little bit more flexible. And now we have the opportunity to reduce the building code on city level. And now we can, as a city, decide which number of car parking lots per apartment we want. And this is the overview, and then I come to the two examples. The overview is we are planning now, this is not yet decided by the city council, but we in the administration are planning to make zones in the city area, And the more you are in the inner city, the lower the standard for car parking will be, and outside higher standards, of course. And all flats, all housing areas will become standards for bicycle parking. And then we will also set a measurement for mobility concepts, for example, car sharing. This is still up to come, but I want to show you what is already fixed. 2 examples. The one example, as I told you, the development of the inner city area, which is not so big, but in the inner city, it is the biggest development area with about 550 households, about 1,000 inhabitants. And there we have the lowest number of car parking standard which we ever had in the city of Freiburg. It is only 0.3 per flat, and all car parking, I will come to this later, will be stored in a central parking garage, in one central parking garage at the edge of this development area. To lower the housing cost, to make it more environmental friendly traffic. And then we will set up a mobility concept with at least 15 car sharing cars, with bicycle rental, cargo bikes, and all car parking will be charged. This is the one example. The next example is bigger. That is our by far biggest development area, a new city district for 15,000 inhabitants. And we are working on this for years now and developing it for years. It should start in 2 or 3 years with the first blocks built. And there we have a special system which we didn't have in this way yet in Freiburg. All car parking will not be in underground parking spaces, but it will be in 10 to 15 centralized car parking, multi-story car parking lots. And so it is similar to the other smaller project, and we will supplement this with at least 100 car sharing cars. So it will get a perfect car sharing coverage. It will get bike rental, cargo bicycles, and everything, tram system, bicycle pass, everything that we have for environmental friendly traffic modes. And what is the last example, what is also worthwhile looking on a short view, we have one existing city district that was built in a similar way. And maybe, as I've mentioned at the beginning, some of you know, it is the city district Vauban, and it is, as I know, one of the very few examples in Germany and maybe even in Europe where very low car parking standards were set up and no cars next to the housing. The cars are only in central parking garages and car sharing, so, and bike rental and everything. And as you see in the yellow box, it was all in all, after a little bit difficulties in the beginning, but all in all, it went to a very, very great success. And now this city district is rated as one of the most desired living areas in Freiburg. So we are successful, we can be successful in the combination of environmental friendly policy and attractive city districts for people. So I have the conclusion. That is our ideas at the moment: new development areas with less car dependent, lower numbering of car parking spaces, centralized parking garages. And then maybe you are interested in, we need, of course, operators for this, private companies maybe owned by the city. And of course, these garages will turn, as we'll probably hear later, to multiple hubs with car sharing, e-charging, delivery service, and other ideas. That was the idea from Freiburg.
Thank you, Peter. Great presentation. You answered my question also. Do we need operators for this? So that's already one element that can be interesting for the audience as well. New business opportunities. There are a couple of questions in the chat, but I will, for timing, I will only look at one. I hope you can answer to the question of Olivier, which is quite technical. But Esther de Rijs, she asks whether you mix the shared cars with the privately owned cars, or whether you separate them in different garages. So how do you, what's your plan to make that some kind of a common space, or whether you have dedicated shared mobility hubs? Yep.
Yeah, that's indeed an interesting question where we are working on. We will put some of the car sharing cars in the streets so people will see them and will have easy access. But as there are too many car sharing cars, some of the car sharing cars we will put in the garages. And there we will probably make dedicated car sharing spaces, yeah, to make it easier for the people to use.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Peter and Lawrence, and we'll move to Theo for the next block of presentations. I'll disappear.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Ivo. Good morning, everybody. My name is Theo Thuis, MD Innovation of Q-Park. And I'm representing also the EPA as chairman of the STC, the Scientific and Technology Technical Committee. So great presentations this morning. Lawrence, he was referring to parking as a game changer, and we as the parking industry, Nigel told that it's representing the public and private sector are really contributing. And I like also the idea of parking having a more strategic tool. It's not only an operational tool, it's a strategic tool for cities to be integrated into urban planning and urban development. And I would like to continue now with João Caetano Dias, business director of Empark, who will give us an insight of this strategic tool for cities. So he will give us an insight in an example of transforming parking structures into urban mobility hubs. João, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Theo. Good morning to all of you. Just a small correction. I'm not business director, I'm new business director, which is this kind of business that we are talking about. Sorry. So I will share my screen just 1 second. Can you see it? Share. Yes, I think you are seeing it. Am I right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I work for a private operator. We managed about 250 car parks in Iberia, Portugal, and Spain. The first part of my presentation is something you all know, but I always like to remind it. In the last years, we have been observing a trend, a very nice trend in many of our cities, to make cities more livable, more agreeable. And one of the major characteristics of this movement is to release a surface space, to make the surface space free, leave it for people, reduce the number of roads, reduce on-street parking, unclog sideways. So turn more valuable this surface space that we cannot build anymore. It's what exists. And I think that we all agree that these kind of images are now a nonsense for our times. If we imagine a world where most of the vehicles are EVs or plug-in vehicles, this will be something that we should see in almost all the street. And this is an absurd. Cables crossing sidewalks, huge electrical power running through cables. This makes life dangerous for pets, for blind people, for wheelchairs. So this does make many sense now. And we had a solution for this. In car parks, we had a solution for this. Something like this, where everything is nice, is organized. No one feels problems walking in the streets if these cables are underground. The same happens with loading and unloading areas. This is not everywhere, but in many cities of Europe, you still can see this double parking, sidewalk parking, bike lane parking, like this guy here in the middle photo. all kinds of illegal parking occurs every day in many cities with the excuse that they are working. So often tolerated this excuse in so many cities. Parking also can help on this, of course, because we can move these areas of warehousing for inside car parks, and then we have this last mile distribution scheme that we all already know. And another problem with the cities and it's a nice move, but with unattended consequences, mainly in touristic cities, is this that we can see in these images. There are photos taken, these photos are taken in attractive touristic cities. I believe many of you have already witnessed this kind of scenes. This is very common in cities like Lisbon or Madrid. It was before the pandemic, but sometimes you still can see this kind of things. Once again, there are better solutions to draw up light mobility vehicles in an organized way inside of city car parks. That's what you can see here. So why is this relevant? Because many of our cities in Europe, and these are maps that I pick randomly from internet, many of our cities have a lot of underground or multi-story car parks everywhere. That serves everywhere. So space is so valuable. So why can't we use some of this space that it's not making cities ugly for underground? Well, I'll be back to this later because these have some economic impacts. But what we believe that can be moved out of streets is this kind of things: EV charging, car rental, car sharing, scooter sharing, bike sharing, scooter maintenance and recharge, bike maintenance and recharge, last mile delivery, package lockers, mail lockers, and eco car washes. Of course, we already have this in some of our car parks. So these activities need to compete for space because space is not free. And I'll be back for this in the end of my presentation. Let me just tell you the story of what we did at Empark. By the way, our company is changing its name for Telpark, which is the name of our digital platform, but still using Empark today. So at Empark, we decided to, in some areas, to offer space in car parks to concentrate this kind of services, and we call it Telpark Mobility Hubs. Just a curiosity, I have here this kind of drawings because it's the first drawing we did in a meeting in a paper, and then we did this in some kind of design, and in the end, we drew the mark Telpark Mobility Hubs, and this is the example of what we have in one car park in Cologne with the directory of companies that are already there. So, Telpark Mobility Hubs. So we have already one working. We opened in July in Madrid in Plaza Colón, so a very centric square in Madrid. And the concept is simple. If you are a mobility operator, light mobility operator, you do some kind of these new economy things that need space in center cities, join us underground, join us. And we inaugurated, this is the inauguration slide. We inaugurated with 30 charging points. We have now 35 because demand are growing. We had 7 car sharing companies, bike company, scooter company. We had spaces reserved for apps that do reservation in car parks. So and this is a premium area. This is we choose the best area of the car park, not something hidden. We increased illumination for this area. We paint the floor with the white color. We put if you look at the middle photo, you see that in top of every space is the name of the brand that is reserving that space. We do a lot of advertising in all of the car park with maps saying there's the Telpark Mobility Hub, and we invite companies to join us. We already have companies that were not there at the beginning, like EV sharing, the car sharing company. And we are all increasing space. And what we decide is that we will increase space. If you look at the last slide, one of the spaces is painted in white, but the one in the back is the common parking space, lower lighting and not the same quality. So if we need more spaces, we go for new lines in the car park, and we get more and more. We are opening first one is opening Madrid. We are now trying to open, let's see if you can do it before the end of the year, in Barcelona. And also we have planned in San Sebastian and Bilbao, so in Spain. And now the most interesting question: why not everywhere? Because we need to have economic sense for all this. We are a private operator, and space has value. All this is related to the SAMP system that Lawrence showed us before. So hubs must be economically viable. Okay, we are not doing anything for free because we have shareholders and we need to make profitability of the spaces. So we need to balance what we lose. These are centric car parks. They are often complete. They are very demanded, so they are good car parks. And to take some places out of rotation and the seasonal ticket systems and put them off rotation as a cost. So the companies need, moving here, need to agree to pay a price. And the price needs to be a price that is higher than the common seasonal ticket because it has a reserved space, full-time reserved space, 24 hours a day. We are basically invoicing companies for 50% more than a typical seasonal ticket. So they need to agree on the price. So they only move to the hub if they think the price is reasonable. And for the price to be reasonable, there should be for these companies no better alternative. And this is very important because many cities offer free space for this kind of activities. So if a car sharing company is parked for free on street, they will never are willing to pay 400 euros a month or 500 euros a month to move to underground car park. So if the city contemporizes with double parking for load and unload, there's no reason for a company be interested in moving to a car park to do their warehousing for last mile distribution. If city offers low cost charging on street, like many cities do, some of them free charging, EV charging on street, with charges belonging to the city at a discount price, something like that. So drivers will want to park on street for charging. They don't want to leave the on street and go underground where they need to pay for parking. And they do this every time they think they will get a discount in some other place. So all these kind of actions that cities sometimes do are equivalent to subsidize companies to do their businesses occupying premium spaces for free or at discount price. So if a city sells on-street license for 100 euros a year, like some cities that we are operating for car sharing companies, there will be never mobility hubs in those cities. Okay. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. By basically the success of a mobility hub, it's highly dependent of city policies, highly dependent. And this is the reason why we are only doing this in these cities, because it's where we can see that we have demand at the price that we need to sell these spaces for doing this an alternative business for us as parking operators. And thank you, just this.
Thank you very much, João. Great presentation. You give us an insight in the challenges of a parking operator transforming into a mobility hub operator. And here you see that the parking industry, public and private, is already in the transition because 5 years ago we were talking about all kinds of mobility services, and now we are introducing how to integrate these services in a business case, in an economic viable way. And there you see all our experiences of being already more than 50 years busy with the management, parking management in paid parking. And here we would like to contribute to cities and to keep cities livable and accessible, because this approach of mobility hubs is really contributing to open up squares and to improve urban realm, urban areas, and to give citizens more freedom and space. And on the other hand, we are organizing and we're starting to organize and to contribute to organizing the shared mobility the shared mobility economy. So thank you very much for that. There are a couple of questions, but we will do the questions after our contribution, which will be next. Olivier Challe, head of EV charging strategy at Indigo. This is another example of how are we able to contribute as a parking sector, as a parking industry, to open up our parking infrastructure. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Just to confirm. Good. So, well, the introduction is already made. I'm Olivier Challe, in charge of EV strategy. Just a very brief introduction to the Indigo group that most of you know. We are in 11 countries. We are one of the parking leader with 5,400 car parks operated, 2.4 million spaces managed, and I have some pre-COVID figures for the number of employee and turnover. So last year we all lived something very unexpected, the COVID, and since the COVID it entered into our life. Basically, Indigo Group wanted to take the opportunity to think twice to the change that it will have in our world, and we identified several trends. So first of all, the property price within the cities keep increasing or exploding. Citizens wish for a peaceful traffic, free of noise, stress, and pollution. There is also a need of transportation combined with a need of soft mobility. There is room for soft mobility in our cities. We expect them to take a big role in the last mile and so on. There is also another trend that we saw, which is the 15-minute city coming to life. Basically, the need for the citizens to have everything at a 15 minutes distance of where they are, avoiding long congestion. Also, as Joe illustrated, we need to free up the space in the street. We cannot sustain to have well, EV charging in the middle of the cities. We cannot have mopeds stuck anywhere. And also, last trend is a change of certain lifestyle with increasing of home office, which will have an impact on the urban mobility. So one of the illustration of the, so in the end, we came up with a new purpose for the group. This purpose is opening space for peaceful city motion. And we had to embody this purpose into several very concrete action. And one of them that I'm leading is how do we welcome EVs in our cities? So the EV revolution is really ahead of us. We believe it's the biggest industrial change for the last decades that will soon affect our industry. Today, the consensus is that in 2030, there will be like 30% of the cars in the world will be sold that will be BEV, meaning cars only run by electricity. This figure goes up to 50% if we focus on European market, and even more in cities with an organized parking market. So this is due to obviously to the decrease of the cost of ownership of this vehicle. Also, a lot of environmental aspects will be solved thanks to the local production of the batteries. There is also obviously a lot of environmental challenges that we'll have to face for the recycling the batteries, second use, and so on. But the conclusion we came up with is the change is faster than anticipated by the most optimistic scenario of the past. So we have to adapt our strategy, adapt our car parks, our assets to welcome this EV wave. So first of all, for these EV waves to happen, we need to build trusts with drivers. The conversion of a driver to an EV vehicle requires a trustworthy environment. This is very important to us. We need to ease the access to EV chargers. This comes with obviously online tools, which need to map all the charging points, which also need to give live occupancy of this charging point, which is not available everywhere. We also need to create a new signage to guide the vehicles within the car park to access the charging point. We also need to have more reliable infrastructure. If we look at the charging points that were installed in the last 5 to 10 years, most of them haven't been at the level of service that we could expect. And as a result, people don't always trust that the charging infrastructure will work. We believe that the private has a massive role to play here to make sure that they invest and they make sure that the infrastructure is working in order to get their money back. We also need to have an appropriated pricing structure. There has been a lot of bad experience by EV drivers who were reloading their vehicles and came up with really fantastic pricing. So here again, if we want to build trust, we need to give a very good and clear tariff instructions and guidance to the users and adapt the tariff to the need they have. Finally, in order all this can happen, we need support from regulators to help to create this environment. From what I saw in several European countries, mainly focusing on Spain, France, and Belgium, there is obviously a legal environment, but recharging a vehicle in an underground car park is not something well understood by the fire safety regulation. So we need to have a more robust fire safety regulation. We also need to have public subsidies if we want this infrastructure to come before the EV. It's a kind of a chicken and egg issue. People won't buy an EV unless there is charging infrastructure available in their city where they live. And we cannot invest unless there are cars. So in order to solve this issue, we believe the public has their role to play. One very impactful analysis that I saw in the last months is where we will charge our cars, because we will all drive EV in the coming years. And actually, we will stop going to gas stations, because gas stations will be very limited to some very specific cases. Most of the charges will be done at home or within our work office destination environment. That's also illustrate the change we have to foresee. So we draw a policy, a strategy based on 2 pillars. We want our customer to be able to charge in our car parks, and we think it's absolutely key that we provide them this infrastructure. Otherwise, they will stop going in our car parks and they will stop using their cars because the cars will be electric. So we need to comply with a standard, to deploy a standard charging offer to defend our core business. In our vision, as it's our core business, it needs to be done by the parking operators. So we no longer only operate parking barriers, we also have to operate a charging network. We invest ourselves into this, what we call standard charging infrastructure. Standard charging is basically alternate AC charging with a speed of 7 to 22 kVA, which is perfectly suitable for a medium or long stay, meaning that a client that comes for 2.5 hours in a car park can get maybe 30% of its battery recharge within this parking session, which is not an issue because he remains in a charging environment, in a city environment, and at his next destination he can keep charging. We need also to be able to market them as park and charge solutions. So we deploy this park and charge offer in Indigo, including like monthly subscriptions, available in all the car, well, nationwide in France, and it will be available in Belgium early next year. And we came up with a premium to be paid above the monthly subscription tariff in order to be able to have almost unlimited use of our charging infrastructure. It also allowed us to deploy a very simple tariff policy, like we decided to leave the charging per time, which was the rule at the time before in Indigo, and now we have a tariff grid which reflect our costs. So we have like 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which is not too expensive, plus 3 cents per minute in order to incite our customer to have maximum rotation so that we can increase the number of charging sessions in our infrastructure. So since we introduced this new tariff, it allowed to decrease by 30% the average charging duration, which was above 10.5 hours per session, which was far too high. And we are creating, we are delivering more and more service for more and more customers. So that was the standard charging, and we also come up with a new initiatives in our car park. So this one is more complex. Is a fast charging solution. We want to be able to host fast charging hubs in our car park in the city center. So why do we have to do that? First of all, there is an increasing demand which we will be facing in the coming years. People will have some urgent top up to do. So basically, people who drive in the city don't always have time to park, can't always have a parking slot where they can recharge their car. And in that case, they have urgent top up to make before driving back home when they live far away. This is the first need. There is also a massive need in the taxi VTC, who stay all day long in an urban environment and need to recharge their cars. We can also imagine here VTC waiting for a ride hailing while charging their cars. Today, VTC drive along the streets, polluting for nothing, and they wait for a customer to call them. If they are located in key places, key locations in the city, they can recharge, and when they have a client calling them, they can stop the session and do their job. Finally, third point, last but not least, urban logistic. We have as many solutions of urban logistic as there are as the number of players. Some of them just do the delivery with using bikes. Some of them use stronger, bigger vehicles. And for these bigger vehicles who remain in the urban environment, we need to create an environment. Well, we need to offer them solutions. Why do we need to offer them solutions? Also because there is not much gas station in the cities, and recharging a vehicle, even with a very fast charger, requires 10 times more floor, 10 times more square meters. So in the past, when you had only four in a gas station where 4 cars could refuel their vehicle, you will only be able to have 10 times less energy delivered. So you need much more room. And in the end, the offer in the cities is quite limited. So cities want to reallocate their ground floor for pedestrian and soft mobilities on a regulated environment. João. Obviously, the charging, this one I just went through it. And the car park needs to be in key location designed to welcome cars. We don't want to create more room for cars in the cities, so let's use the car park to do these new services. Obviously, as a final word, there are some fire safety constraints. Fast charging in underground car park is prohibited in some countries. It's allowed in other countries. Today, we see the regulation is not so consistent. We definitely need to have a strong fire safety for this activity, because there are risks. But we know that using technology, we can cope with these risks, and we believe that there is this is one of the natural growth factors for our car park. So for Indigo, we believe also that this activity is not our core business. we're welcoming people that would not come in our car parks, and therefore we decided to open our assets to investors, to third-party investors. So we hope to be able to open the first hubs early 2022, first half of 2022, and we hope that other cities, other operators will also join this trend, because we need to all gather and join our hands and forces in order to create this trustworthy environment, which will allow people to keep using their cars in the cities. So thank you everyone, and feel free to contact me to pursue this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Olivier. A great example, great presentation, great example of how we are contributing in this this transformation from just a parking facility to a kind of an energy as part of the mobility hub infrastructure. So there are a couple of questions. So before I would like to give the hand over to Roland Cracco to present the European Parking Congress next year in Brussels. I would like to give the floor to some questions. And you see in both presentations of João and Olivier, there is the movement from a parking lot, a parking spot to a service approach. And one of the questions in the chat of Tolga to you, Olivier, is your monthly value of the 69 euros? Is it including, is it parking and charging?
No, if I may answer directly for this one, this is above our tariff grid for parking, and 69 euro is for people who are not monthly subscribers, who can only apply for the charging service. Or monthly subscriber can apply for a 49 euro above their monthly subscription.
Okay.
This grant an access to any of our charging infrastructure, meaning that if they go in any of our car park, they can charge for within their subscription.
Okay. So we don't go too much into the details, but this is a very interesting starting point to understand how the servicing will be organized in the future. And are you doing business now with this so-called on a European level a charge point operator, CPOs, or do you want to be as Indigo a CPO by yourself?
So for standard charging, we are CPOs ourselves because we invest directly and so we operate them. For fast charging, we won't be CPO. The CPO will be our industrial partner who provide this service. We invest at his own risk, and obviously who will decide for the pricing of the service. And we mainly expect from this charging partner a rent to be paid for the room it takes within our car park.
Yeah, that's a very interesting discussion, and that's also very important for cities, because I can imagine in partnering with cities, you are cooperating with cities in choosing the same CPO who is doing also the charging operation on street, and cities will also be interested in this kind of integrations. But ultimately it's all about price. What are the customers paying for their electricity kilowatt hour at home and on the go? Because you mentioned already the lack of transparency at this moment, which will improve hopefully very soon to all the customers. So from this service point of view, I would like to go back to João. A question of Christian. And João, how did you realize the integration of the different mobility services? Are you using a specific platform, or is it all built in-house? So is there an interrelationship between these mobility services, and how do you manage and integrate these services into your own operation?
Okay, we don't do anything. We just provide the space, 4G connection, and the GPS location inside the car park. That's the only thing we do. We just rent space. It's not our business. We don't want to be partners on that businesses. We are just providing the space. Except in EV, where we are like Indigo, a CPO. We have already about 500 charging points in all our car parks. In that case, we decided to do the operation by ourselves, because we think it's too much core for the future of our sector. But in every other business, we don't want to know about the business, so we leave that for our partners.
Okay, very interesting. And then the partners are also promoting their services and promoting and marketing their services by themselves?
Yes, they are, because if you go to any of the apps they're using for shared vehicles, you see the location, and they have the location of our car park. So, and we also promote them because we put a directory of all the companies that are in car parks, both in internet and in the car park. Every stairway, every lift, we have the directory and where you can find the mobility app inside the car park. So we promote them, and they promote us, because when they say that if you want a shared vehicle, you should go to this car park, it's also promotion for the car park.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you say something about, because you mentioned the example in Madrid, your first mobility hub in Madrid. Are these, for example, shared mobility operators also offering their services on street together with the city? Is there a kind of an, because for the citizen and for a user, I don't care whether it's offered in the street or it's offered in a car park. Can you say something about
we have now seven shared vehicle company inside that car park, that particular car park, 7, so it's a good number. And as much as I know, some of those companies are also in other car parks where we don't have this formal mobility hub, but we offer space for them. We believe that they're not on street. I never seen them on street, and because I think there's a price to pay. In Lisbon, the sharing companies that operate in Lisbon, they paid 110 euros a year for the city to be the right to park on street. If you can park on street for 110 euros a year, of course, you're not paying 200 euros a month inside the car park. This is why the city policies are very important. So we are willing to provide the service, but we need to find an economic equivalence that makes this reasonable for us. But no, I believe that most of these companies are not on street, because some of those companies, share vehicle companies, are also EV sharing companies, and they need to charge their cars. So they're using our chargers inside the car park to do the charging and to wait for clients.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really very challenging, because Peter was also referring to his neighborhoods in Freiburg, and we know all kind of other cities, big and medium-sized and small. It's the struggle of developing the shared mobility by cars, for example, and how to give them feasibility to the customers. Do you give them a free parking space on street? And this is also part of the transition, because a free floating system is again distributing the focus of cities in having nice squares and a nice public space. But
if you may, Theo, let me just add this. I had a meeting with the city. I will not tell you what city it was, where they are willing to transform some car parks that belong to the city. They are not private operators, in just mobility hubs. They saw our mobility hub in Madrid, and they called us, do you want to do this here, but with no parking, just mobility hub? Okay. And what we are saying to them is that can be done if you forbid this activity to go on street for free. And that's, I don't know what they will do, but now I think the discussion in this city is if they should do something like this, like forbid the deliveries during the day, forbid car sharing activities on street, this kind of thing. It's possible, but it has a price, of course. Yeah. So we need to get a balance on this.
Okay. Thank you very much, João, for this insight in part of the transition. So looking to the time, I would like to give the floor now to Roland Cracco, CEO of Interparking, and he will give us a short introduction about the 20th EPA International Parking Congress next year in Brussels, where we will expose and where we will discuss all these different topics and items and the contribution of the parking industry and the parking infrastructure to the mobility transition, which is taking place in all the cities in Europe. Roland, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. As for the slides, Theo, are you injecting them or how can they be?
Nicola has to inject them. I'm not able to.
Okay,
sorry.
Good. Well, anyway, good morning to all of you. My name is Roland Cracco, as you can see it on the screen. I'm the CEO of the Interparking car parking group. I'm also president of the Belgian Car Parking Federation, and it is an honor for our federation to host in the month of September of next year the 20th European Parking Association Congress and exhibition. Unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, we had to postpone the Congress by 1 year. It should have taken place in October of this year. Well, unfortunately, the situation being what you know, it has been postponed. But nevertheless, we hope to be able to host 500 to 600 participants, delegates, coming from the private and from the public urban mobility car parking sector. The Congress will be taking place in Brussels, which many of you know, the capital city of Belgium, but above all, the capital city of Europe. We have aimed to organize a CO2 neutral Congress. And in that context, one very important thing is that most of the events take place in a relatively small area or footprint. So the Congress will be taking place in the Congress Center Square, which is just a stone throw away from the Grand Place, the center of the city of Brussels. And we will be hosted the first evening by the mayor of Brussels in this very attractive and specific building, which is the City Hall of the city of Brussels on the Grand Place, which many consider to be one of the most attractive and nice squares, not only in Europe, but in the world. We thank the mayor of Brussels. We are being backed by the local authorities in the context of this exercise. And a second major event will be the gala dinner on the 13th of September, which will be taking place in a car park, actually, since that's our core business. We decided to organize it in a car park. And we are lucky enough to have a car park which resembles more an underground cathedral with extremely high ceilings. And it will be a surprise for all the delegates to be able to dine in actually what our core business is. The topics which will be discussed, and this is maybe the next slide, are the major challenges we all have. Challenges which the public authorities have, challenges which the private players have. And the first major challenge is the management of urban space. We all know that public space, urban space is of a much too high quality just to park cars. So what are the policies being implemented so as to give back public space for a usage which is of a higher quality than just parking cars? Various cities have different approaches, but at the end of the day, the general approach is to try to push the cars in off-street car parks, underground or above ground, and to free the urban space for people who walk, who cycle, or public transport. What are the new business models we will be faced with? the representative of Indigo spoke about EV charging. This is one of the possible future usages of off-street car parks, since as we see that many cities try to reduce the number of cars parked on street. Well, this means also that these cars will not be able to be charged on street. So this creates an opportunity for off-street car parkings to become the gasoline stations of tomorrow, with all the challenges, and I will not go into too many details since Indigo presented it quite well, which are linked to this evolution. Also, maybe last mile delivery, urban farming. There are many things which are being thought about and which will be discussed during this Congress. Parking and technology, as you all know, previously the first contact that client had with the car park was just the physical contact with the barrier. Today, with digitization, trips to the city or to a specific destination or organized much beforehand. How does car parking have to position itself in this digitized world, which is a challenge for all human activities at the end of the day? Influencing behavior, how to push our citizens to behave in a responsible way in the use of their cars, but also of public transport or alternative means of transport. And at the end of the day, what we want to all of us reach is to make our cities more attractive. How to do this? Maybe the next slide. So I spoke initially about well, receptions, dinners, but at the end of the day, we are there to work. So we will have plenary sessions. I will not go through all the details of these. Spoke about some of the general topics which will be spoken about, but one important element which takes place at every Congress is the EPA award ceremony, by which actually specific car parks, specific products, services will receive an award in this context. And then at the same time, and that's maybe the next slide, we will have parallel sessions going into more detail on various specific themes related to our activities. One thing extremely important is also to attract young urban parking professionals. They are the future, and we will be working all together to see how to promote their presence. So this is in a very quick nutshell what we will be trying to do. And one very important element, what is the theme of this Congress? Well, it's the EU Green Deal and the future of car parking. The EU Green Deal, which is impacting very many sectors of activities, and we will certainly try to show how the car parking business is trying to also take its responsibilities and have an active role in this context. We have many car operators who today are aiming, or who have already, as is the case of Interparking, reached a CO2 neutrality. You have, as far as environment is concerned, new technologies which are being rolled out in some car parks by which the air can be purified. These are all themes which will be approached during this Congress, and I dearly hope that many of you will find the time to come to Brussels so as to well, to work together, to network, and try to together improve the various challenges we have as far as car parking is concerned. At the end of the day, we all must also take notice of one very basic fact. A 500 space car park corresponds to about 2.5 kilometers cars which disappear from along the sidewalks. So you're all very welcome, and we all look very much forward in hosting all of you in Brussels from the 12th to the 14th of September 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Roland, for this great presentation. And it shows that we are working very intensively together. The partnerships between the public and the private sector also showing these themes, what we're also discussing now during this webinar. And we are preparing ourselves for our next year meeting. Thank you very much. And I would like to give also on behalf of the time, the handover to Ivo from these insights from the parking sector today to the next session, integrated management solutions for the sustainable transition. Ivo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Theo, and also thank you, Mr. Cracco. I think you find a partner in POLIS and also in Park for Some project to make the conference a success, the Congress a success. We'll conclude the webinar with two presentations. The first one, a very interesting case study from the Rome-Fiumicino Airport with Antonio Fraccari, who is the CEO of ADR Mobility, who will present their work on access controls and the integration of on and off-street management. And then we listen to one of the EPA award winners, I think, the German Railways. But first, we go to Italy with Antonio. Antonio, can you share the presentation?
I do it in a way, in a minute. Okay. So I'm very honored to be here and to introduce this, let's say, case that we have in Italy. And especially it's an honor to talk after Roland Cracco, that was my former boss, and introducing a very interesting program for the next EPA Congress. So what we have done here, as a matter of fact, we are presenting what we have done in Fiumicino, that is one of the two airports of Rome, but the very same stuff we have done it also in Ciampino, so in the second airport. So as you see here what we had basically to solve. This was the situation before the implementation. On the two pictures on the left side, you see the arrival level, and on the right side you see the departure level. So very big mess, especially in let's say all let's say hours of the day, in the morning on the departure, in the afternoon on the arrival. Why this? Because Fiumicino had a structure, let's say, coming back from the 60s, where all the three terminals has been, let's say, built up on a single, let's say, way of access. So all the three are just one after the others. And before the implementation, I will show you basically all the vehicles were able to jump from one lane to another lane. It was not a precise traffic flow. So what we decided, first of all, is to have the public traffic, let's say, close to the terminals, okay, and the private traffic a bit far away, with some, let's say, protected pedestrian walk and ways and so on. But this was a very critical decision. So business traffic close to the airport, close to the terminal, and private traffic a bit far away. So our system is made by several, you will see later on, gates. All the gates are done by two cameras, basically one at the entrance of a certain area and one at the exit of a certain area. And all together, we have something like 51 gates. So it's 51 gates, let's say, describing basically something like 30 areas in the airport of Fiumicino. The system is very linked together, so meaning that we have linked the system of these cameras together with the PMS, together with the parking system, because between the two cameras, usually we have a possibility to enter in certain car parking. So we need to include in the system the PMS. So the PMS is attached to the same system of the cameras, as well as the 30 pane display machines we have. You should know that we have 200 PMS gates, parking management system gates, and 30 pane display machine in the same area. Okay. We have, of course, all the system shared with the local police and the municipality departments. We have a remote assistance and an H24, let's say, call center managed by ourselves. But most important, we have, let's say, digitalized all this matter because the external users could interact directly. For example, if they are taxis coming outside from outside Rome, or if they are, let's say, disabled people able to enter in every area and so on, they could register their plates, their license plates autonomously with our application. We had a very important communication campaign. Of course, we had to, let's say, send first of all, let's say, uncomfortable message, so that while parking is was terminated and was supposed to be terminated, and of course, you cannot stay longer than 15 minutes on the normal areas. And on the street of the airports, and you have to reach one, let's say, off street or on street. So we found out also some testimonial, and we had this kind of message in the first month done by this guys. This is the result of the implementation. You see still on the, let's say, on the left the arrival, and then some picture of the departure. You see, it's much more clean. It's more order, no traffic jam, pedestrian ways, let's say, limited, and let's say more safe as a matter of fact. Okay. And then we have, of course, a very nice analytics allowing us to check day by day, hour per hour, how the traffic is in all the areas of the airport. This is just an example of this tool. We are able then to recognize, let's say, peak hours that in an airport are quite, let's say, different from winter to summer, from one day to another one. And so we are prepared also to move more people and to have more people assisting our meeters and greeters or passengers to reach the right part. So basically, this is the description of what we have done. We are renewing, completing the system, and let's say also the municipalities on which we are working. They are very happy with this system. And what is important is that the system seems very, let's say, very easy, very user friendly for the users, for our people, for the public officers working on it. But then it's very much complicated inside and very interlinked between PMS, pane display machines, cameras on the street, and so on. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm of course ready to provide some answer to your question.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat if there are any questions. Okay, yeah, there was we knew there was a small problem with the resolution of the presentation. So indeed, there are the lowest line was missing, but we tried to fix it before the webinar, but we didn't manage. But you will find the presentations shared also afterwards, where you can see the full view better. So that should be solved. And also I can assure you that all materials will be shared. Yeah, I have a quick question. So I understood also when we discussed your presentation in preparation of the webinar, that this is also very relevant for the surrounding areas of the airport, because there is some kind of an overflow of problems if the parking is not well managed on site. The area around the airport sees the problems. Is that true? And can you explain a bit?
Yeah, this was true. Given again the fact that let's say the airport was built in the 60s, and then of course let's say with an old type of setup of the streets. So only one street's going to Terminal 1, 3, and 5. And this, of course, creates a problem, because as soon as this main street is blocked or there's a major traffic jam, this traffic jam is actually replicated around the airport. This actually is very similar for Ciampino, but then with the implementation of this system, and with let's say the fact that we are pushing people to reach the let's say the parking easier and in a quicker way, of course this is completely solved. What is important is that this system has been then let's say copied by other airports in Italy, more specifically Naples, Venice, Torino, and Turin, and Genoa. And also by other cities. As a matter of fact, other cities decided to have what we call ZTL, so limited traffic areas linked with P&D and linked with PMS on one unique system. And there are middle-sized cities exactly working on that and using the same system we choose.
Okay, good. Very interesting. We'll come back to other questions after the next presentation as well. I have one additional short question, Antonio. There's also a security issue around airports. I mean, in terms of how is that integrated with the parking? And then I'm not talking about safety, but really like criminal and terrorism safety, security.
Yes. We provided the police the possibility to have on their own, so we do not see this list, a list of a gray list of plates. So basically, they fill up a gray list of this license plate, and they receive alerts in mail and SMS themselves. Of course, we do not see or we do not manage this, both for entrances in the airport as well as in the parking. So as soon as one of the, let's say, critical plates is entering in the area of the airports using this camera I showed you before, or in the parking using the camera that let's say are taking out cars from the streets, so are canceling the cars, as a matter of fact, from the main system, but the police could see also that they receive special alerts.
I was muted. Yeah. Interesting, and I think that's also something that might occur in urban areas as well. Thank you. We'll move to Torsten Sprengel, who is CEO at Deutsche BahnPark, who will talk about the park and ride schemes they have in place. And Torsten, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Okay. I guess you can see my presentation.
Yes, but it's in editing mode. So if you could move into the Bildschirmpräsentation mode, that would be good.
So now it should be right.
Yes, great.
Oh, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to be able to talk to you. My name is Torsten Sprengel, and I'm the CEO of DB BahnPark. Today, I've got 10 minutes to introduce and explain what our company is planning to do and already doing to address the main topics of today's webinar. There's a lot to say, and I will do my best to cram it into the next 10 minutes. This slide gives you an overview. Firstly, a quick introduction. DB BahnPark was born almost 20 years ago when Deutsche Bahn made the strategic decision to integrate the customer parking experience into their overall plan and make parking an active part of the mobility chain. After a search for a joint venture partner, Contipark, the German wing of Interparking, along with Deutsche Bahn, formed a company called DB BahnPark, with the national rail operator holding a 51% stake. For over 15 years now, DB BahnPark has proven extremely successful, with double-digit growth year on year becoming the standard. This has been a very successful public-private partnership, taking the exclusive locations of Deutsche Bahn and combining those with Interparking expertise in parking. One very thing to mention, DB BahnPark is a management company and Interparking operates the car parks. This slide gives you an overview of where DB BahnPark is active on the German market. The top line shows the total number of stations in each station category. The second line of numbers shows the number of BahnPark stations in each category. The table at the bottom gives you an idea of our pricing structures per hour, per day, and per month. Moving from the largest stations on the left to the smallest on the right, you can see how pricing fluctuates. Let's take an example. In the left-hand column, we are talking about major cities like Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, and so on. In these major cities, depending on the exact location, the hourly price fluctuates between 1 and 6 euros. The average being €2.99 per hour. Towards the other end of the scale, at a small station in a suburban town, you can see clearly the difference in price for hourly, daily, and monthly fares. The row underneath the bold average price shows the price range according to the location. And some important background. In 2019, the German government announced a range of goals and aims in order to meet its important climate objectives. Deutsche Bahn is a key player in fulfilling climate, sustainability, and mobility targets. The new strategy of Deutsche Bahn foreseen that by 2030, the number of passengers in long-distance trains is forecasted to double and create 1 billion more journeys each year on the regional network. Out of this federal decision, we have taken the step to form our future strategy. As Deutsche Bahn's parking expert wing, we are supporting all efforts to make this ambitious strategy work. To explain the pretty picture, in the past, a traditional car park would have, for instance, enough space for 100 cars and nothing else. In the future, things will be different. We'll be reducing the overall number of car parking spaces and introducing sustainable elements. For example, car sharing and car hiring points, bicycle parking, e-scooter parking, space for DRP services, and other more environmental friendly services. In addition, we are experimenting with security lockers for more valuable bicycles, including e-bikes. We are also looking for partners to provide e-charging stations at our locations and looking at different ways of monetizing this. So where in the past we were able to provide a service to 100 car owners, we will be able in future to significantly increase the number of customers at the same location. For example, by turning 10 traditional car parking spaces into 60 bicycle parking points. We automatically increase the number of people engaging with our service. We estimate that at locations such as these, we can increase the number of passengers by up to around 100%. And that all on the same plot without having carry out major building works. Okay, so how does this look in practice? To prove that it's not just fantasy, please take a look at this current project in Stuttgart. This is a brand new project opened to the public only a few weeks ago, which incorporates many of the elements I have talked about. The reality here is an offering for e-scooters, e-mopeds, bicycle hire, and car sharing. So a huge transformation of a traditional car park. Furthermore, to add the integrated mobility system, we are testing a car park reservation system for open car parks without barriers. This prototype will help to fulfill customer requirements and provide train passengers with the security of knowing that not only do they have a seat reservation on the train, but also a parking space reserved for the car. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is seamless mobility. Many thanks for your attention in the last few minutes, and please stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Torsten. Very interesting. I have an immediate question. The link, the use of the car parks, is that always into relation with the with a journey by rail, or are you also really looking at a local market of maybe people using your facilities for parking in their neighborhood, for instance, or?
In the majority, our parking spaces are for train users.
Okay, yeah. No, that's a good choice. I think it's very necessary. Also, I think with the longer journeys in Germany by rail as well. So there's a market next to the daily commuter traffic, let's say. Okay, I'll take a look at the chat to see what is happening in there in terms of questions. Also, inviting Antonio to join for a couple of minutes. So there's a question about the technical integration with Telepass Pay in the case of Italy. Dirk Lauwers is asking Torsten if there is a clear target set, like what is your expectation of people using the park and ride in view of last mile to the station. And he mentions, for instance, in the Netherlands that they assume or plan for 1 in 2 people, passengers traveling by bike. And I know for my own country in Belgium that there are certain assumptions also for for car use to the station. So do you have any targets or standards that you use in that regard? I'm going to close the door for the cleaner who is vacuuming in the.
At our in future, we will provide a lot of parking spaces, not only for cars but also for bicycles and other forms of sustainability mobility services like scooters or so on.
Also, the question from one of my colleagues, what the ambitions are in terms of rollout of these plans. So the numbers and also maybe the size of the operation.
Mm-hmm. Today we are managing around 300 car parks. We will starting with the rollout next year, and okay, we have 300 car parks. It's a lot of work to do, and we have to see what happens in the surrounding. If there are still a lot of bicycle parking at other spaces, we don't have to do this exercise. And I guess we will need for all 300 car parks maybe 5 years, or maybe a little bit more. But every new car park we take over maybe next year is between 5 and 10 new car parks. We will install all these additional service from the start.
Okay, impressive ambitions, and I think we don't expect differently from Germany. Yeah? Of course, that's how we think it works there. So looks like a great shift you are making. Maybe you can also answer in the chat to Dirk, who is looking for a bit of numbers and the actual space shift in percentages that you plan for. There's also a question from Dennis Krijgsman, who asks how customer service support is organized for all these new and combined service providers. So how is that integrated with the parking management? I think it's not very clear whether the customer is then the end user, but I think probably you also in your company need to create an interface with the companies who will run the services.
Yes. Our plan is to give a piece of our car park to a provider of, for example, e-scooters. And they have their own customers and their own customer service for them. We give only the piece of land to have this business there.
Okay, it's also what João said in his presentation or in one of the questions, like we don't want to interfere too much with the actual service running, because in the end it's the companies who are in charge of their client relation. Okay, good. Looking at the time, Theo, I would think maybe it's a good moment to return to the screen. I don't see further questions. So Theo, what did you take from the 2 hours of very interesting presentations? I took down some notes, so I hope you did the same. Yep.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. Really the applications of the service concepts. We were talking already a lot of years now about introducing new services into the parking industry, but this morning and this afternoon we have a lot of showcases, public and private, of this services approach. And there you see the swap and the shift from just being an operator of parking spots on streets or off streets into service companies, where some of the presentations were referring to the digital supportive infrastructure, because online you need to offer all these services online, and that is part of the revolution. So that's one conclusion for me. The second conclusion is really shows the opportunity for cities and for private companies to use the existing parking industry, the parking infrastructure, to move from just a parking facility into an urban mobility hub, and where we need to find the right business cases. But João showed us a very, very interesting approach of being also tangible and the business case around it, and where the parking revenues are a very important basis of these mobility hubs, because that's all the countries and all the cities are struggling how to finance all these mobility hubs. The third remark I would like to make is really partnering and working together and trying to integrate these different services. It's very important. Antonio showed us that this integrated approach, which for me is comparable with a medium-sized city. Yeah? He's combining on-street, off-street, digital services, safety services. So we have to work together to try to have it in a more integrated way. Starting this seminar with Lawrence, who was putting parking as a more strategic tool. I would like to end my remarks by we need to keep attention and to take attention of mobility needs to be included and inclusive. So we need to have a participation of everybody, elderly people, disabled people, families with a lot of young children, where the car is a very important part of this mobility transition. A vehicle on four wheels and public and privately, we're trying to accommodate all kind of vehicles, and be very aware. Last week I saw in one of the international newspapers that the next 10 years there will be a manufacturing of 1 billion cars. So these cars will be clean. These cars will be most of them will be electric. And how are we able to accommodate these cars into cities, in the inner city? We have to find a way to keep our urban areas and urban squares clean. But we need to be very aware that in Europe, a lot of small and medium-sized cities, they don't have an infrastructure for public transport. And 30% of the inhabitants need a car to move. So one of the fundamental rights in Europe is freedom to move. So how are we able to keep the right equilibrium in this with these challenges? So thank you very much for having these great contributions.
Thank you indeed, and thank you, Theo. Also, the notes that I took, I was was in the direction of really seeing this emphasis on the electric vehicle wave, as it was put by Olivier Challe. So the idea that we really need to plan for this on short notice, and we are working with cities who are really feeling the pressure to put out concessions, procurement for charging infrastructure, and really need to find synergies with the parking sector, public and private. So I think this is really a hot topic, and we saw good examples for that. I also liked the this idea or the practice shown by Fiumicino Airport that actually became a model for other urban environments. I think this is really something we might see also in the future, where advanced technologies that are deployed on semi-private or private land, that they then find their way into the management of public space and on and off street parking. And then returning a bit to the start, to the first hour, and there we heard you, Theo, who said that the success of measures is highly dependent on city policies. The idea that we have seen very good operational translation of parking as a strategic tool, I think that's important. But also I want to return a bit to the to the first presentations, where Freiburg has explained that they are actually in it for the long game. So this is about 30, 40 years of urban planning. We have heard some practices, best practices that happening now or will happen in the next 5 years. But I think we also should make sure we give certain concepts and certain practices sufficient time to really deeply enter the human behavior and the mindset of people. I have some last messages from the organizers, and then we'll be ready in time, which is very good. It shows that we need private sector presenters to stay in time. So the presentation I want to share is this one, just to show a couple of next steps in this process, where we have with Park for Sump a number of events scheduled. So take a look at the website. We plan high-level events on parking standards, topic expressed by Peter today, and on electromobility in spring 2022, and also are planning a final conference in Sofia in June 2022. The dates to be confirmed. This group of partners will return with one more webinar at least next year, scheduled for the 22nd of March, where after the on-street and the off-street, we will move into the technologies and digital data standards. So Nigel, get ready for that. And we'll also, you can also return to the first webinar online if you are interested in that. We'll meet definitely at the European Parking Association's Congress and Exhibition. And I also, I wanted to end with a bit of a funny Christmas note, but I must say I found all these depressing messages where mainly in the UK, actually, they're quite vocal on promoting free parking for Christmas as the best way to celebrate your holidays. It's supposed to give a boost to shopping. Not sure if you all agree, but at least some designers have done a great job in trying to get the message across. So yeah, let's not go that way. But anyway, a nice end of year, and I hope to see you in the new year as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ivo.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much,
Ivo.
Bye. And a very happy Christmas to everybody.
Indeed. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye to all.